Okay, hi. So today I'm going to be doing my February reading wrap-up. I do feel weird recording, like when there's like things happening in the world. It feels very weird to just like sit down and like talk about books. But I guess that's what we're going to do because that is what my channel is about. So let's get into stats. So I read 15 books in the month of February, which was quite a number for me. It was over 4,000 pages of reading, so I kind of just jumped right back into the swing of things. Since January I didn't really read as much as I usually do, and then February I kind of like blasted it through it, even though it was a short month. Not all of my reading is from my physical TBR, but from that, I started out the month of February owning 185 books. I acquired two, kind of. It's a bind up, so Babel 17 and Empire Star. These are like sci-fi classics by Samuel R. Delany. I have not read anything by him, and I probably will read this, or at least the first one, Babel 17, in March. So I only acquired two books, and then I read 7 off of my physical TBR, so I went from 185 to 180 books on my TBR, physically. I really hope I'm in focus because I can't see myself right now. Let's start with the books that I don't have too much to talk about, and I always say I don't have much to say, but then I say so many things, so I'm actually going to try to be succinct here. So I finished the Murderbot series as far as it is right now. So I finished Network Effect and then read Fugitive Telemetry. I think I'm going to do like a review of the series so far, and have that up on my channel, so I'm not going to say too much, except I read them with my partner. They're very snarky and funny, and book 5 and 6 are no different. Book 5, just kind of, if you've read any of the Murderbot books, it kind of felt similarly paced as a novella, but like double the length, and it was super action heavy, and then this one had like barely any action. So good entries. I will have more about them in my review of the series. Okay, another one I'm not going to talk too much about, the American Hippo duology by Sarah Gailey. So that is River of Teeth and Taste of Marrow. These are an alternate history taking place in New Orleans, or not just New Orleans, but Louisiana, in like the bayou where the US government imported hippos. And now people like ride hippos and use hippos, and then there's feral hippos, and you get this like kind of eclectic cast of characters. It kind of felt like it had Western vibes, and it's an alternate history in like the hippo thing, but it's also an alternate history in like the people. Like one of your main characters is non-binary, and it's very casual that they use the pronouns they, them. And it's just a bunch of like characters. Like they're very much, every character is very much a character. And the first one, it's like fun. They're not doing an actual heist or anything, but they kind of have this mission, which is like legal, but is it legal to like get rid of these feral hippos from an area? And it's them all being kind of like villainous characters that are kind of criminals in some way or another, kind of all interacting to try to accomplish this, and then other things happen. The second one, it takes place directly after, and it kind of assumes that you care about a relationship from the first, because that's the whole point of the second. It's kind of based around their relationship. And I didn't buy the insta-love relationship in the first, so then when we got to the second and it was about them in some capacity, I just didn't care. And yeah, if it wasn't like a 4-hour audiobook, I probably would have DNF'd it. It is really unlike anything I ever read before, but I can't really say I'd recommend it. Well, that's not true. It's so short. Both of them are so short. Like, I think that if it sounds fun, like, read the first one, but I wouldn't recommend the second one unless the relationship that develops is something that you were rooting for. Where the Drowned Girls Go by Seanan McGuire. This is the 7th book in the Wayfarers, not Wayfarers, that's Becky Chambers, in the Wayward Children series. This one I enjoyed more than some of the previous ones, but you do have to have read all of the other books to really gain like full context. Like I would say if you haven't read book 6, you're not going to be like super spoiled, though you're going to know a character that comes up and like kind of what happens to her, but you have to read books 1 through 5 or else you will be completely spoiled and kind of won't know the context of why people got to where they were. But this is Cora's story. In it, you get to see another school, the one that's been alluded to in other ones. This school is taught a little bit differently, and you kind of see some things happen there. Yeah, it was fun. It was a nice entry into the series. I'm glad that we got to see something a little bit different in the world. And I like how they tied it into book 6. I thought that was good. Now, let's go into some hyped books, or books that have a lot of hype around them that I didn't end up liking, or I didn't end up loving. I didn't get the hype. We'll put it like that. I did not understand the hype around them. And so the first one is the Brown Sister Trilogy. So I buddy read these with Mariana at Mariana Moss Books, and that was a really fun experience in itself. I read romance a lot of the time as like a palate cleanser. So actually doing a buddy reading romances was kind of nice because it made me like kind of question what I like and what I don't like in romance. And I think this experience taught me that I don't totally enjoy contemporary romances. And the main reason, I'm going to put these down. The main reason is because of the conflict. So romance readers know that there's always the third act conflict. And when it's a fantasy, a sci-fi, something like that, the universe can have something in it that causes the conflict outside of the scope of the relationship, which is typically what I prefer. In a contemporary setting, I could make a whole video about how I don't think the third act conflict is necessary at all. This specifically, this one, like, I'm sorry, no. Okay, let me just generally say, so the Brown Sisters Trilogy is about 3 sisters. You know, you follow each of their love stories, their romances. You know a romance is going to give you your happily ever after. Okay, glad we got that out of the way. These are not slow burn in the way that slow burn has a lot of angst associated with the people getting together, where you're like, yes, just get together already. These are not like that. However, consistently in all 3 of them, the relationship did not really start or become like sexual until about halfway through the book, which personally, when you're putting together a trilogy, I would have wanted a bit more of a, I would have wanted the relationship to start kind of at different places. And I will say that like the whole, they all follow the same plot points that they hit, the timing of everything. It was very similar throughout. Get a Life, Chloe Brown. I liked the fibromyalgia rep. I really liked how casually it was handled within the relationship, but I didn't particularly like the conflict at the end. But I did really like Chloe. Chloe was a character that you could root for. I wasn't a huge fan of Red. And if I were to guess if they would be together in 20 years, I would say no. Like, I wasn't sold that they would be together forever. All right, now take a hit, Dani Brown. I actually really liked this up until the third act conflict, in which case, like, that part of the book, like, if you just took like this one scene we had been building for and then made the epilogue the next chapter, I would have loved this book. However, the third act conflict felt very forced. It felt like you were taking the characters and like turning them into something that they weren't. I was annoyed. I was just annoyed. But I loved Dani and I liked Zaf, and I would believe that they are still together. Like, I think that their relationship will last. This one was enemies to lovers, like loose enemies to lovers. This one was like a fake dating friends to lovers. I like the fake dating. It introduces tension into the whole book, and you know that that's going to come to a head in some way. So that's why I don't think when you do something that has tension built into your plot that you need a third act conflict. I am very salty that it happened. But probably my favorite up until that point. And then we had Actor Age Eve Brown, which was again an enemies to lovers situation. And again, like if you're doing like a trilogy, it just surprised me that she used the same trope 2 times. I just didn't like Eve. I couldn't root for Eve. I couldn't really root for the relationship. There's a scene where Dani and Chloe come back into play and they just like totally act out of character. It's very strange. So like that was a bit of a letdown. Also, I have really beautiful editions of these. So I need to figure out, well, I'm actually just going to give them away to someone who might enjoy them more than I do. So yeah. That was my first take that maybe people wouldn't agree with. My second one. And I've been debating if I like middle grade, because I have read middle grade as an adult and I have enjoyed it, but I have found that I have, as a reader, kind of stepped away. I don't really read YA at all, and I don't really like YA, but I can appreciate middle grade more. But like the void in my reading that middle grade fills, that like fast pace, like I'm not having to think as hard because it was designed for children. Not to say it's not intelligent, but like, you know, I'm not having to use my brain a lot to figure out what's going on. That void I've filled with other genres in my reading, so I've kind of stepped away from middle grade. And I was trying to get back into it, and I decided to pick up Amari and the Night Brothers because I have heard everyone say really wonderful things about this, and I didn't really like it. I liked the 3 main characters. So Amari, her best friend at the place she ends up going to, and the boy. I can't remember the boy's name, but the male twin character you end up meeting. I loved all 3 of those characters, and they were really the reason I kept reading the book until the end. The actual plot of it, where it's a girl who finds out that she has abilities and goes to a magical school setting, felt very derivative. The plot was derivative. The kind of, I guess just the whole plot of it, like the concept of it felt very derivative, and the actual like game, so no, it's not really a game situation. The scenario set up in the book for her to kind of achieve against, like the climactic part of the book, so what was kind of pushing the book forward, was derivative for me. Like, I've read that before in one of the most popular middle to grade to YA series of all time. Like, it didn't feel fresh, which I was kind of just surprised by, just given everyone's reaction to it. I enjoyed the characters. I enjoyed the elements of Amari's home life being interwoven into the storyline. However, the storyline itself, I wasn't a huge fan of. That being said, I want to find out what happens between 2 characters. So there's a potential I still would read the second book. So normally if I absolutely didn't like something or just felt super mediocre about it, I wouldn't continue reading on. But I think that if there's a potential I would read on, I would just curb my expectations of it. Everyone loves this series or this book, so I guess just take my opinion with whatever grain of salt you want to, because obviously it's super unpopular with that and with these. But this is what frustrates me. I know that a lot of people I hang out with or talk to on BookTube and we watch each other's channels don't read romance and they picked these books up. Like, Mariana and I were talking about this in our buddy read, specifically Brian at Bookish and Scott at Gunpowder Fiction and Plot. And we were both frustrated that this was the romance that they picked up, because for us, it's not like, even though it's super hyped, for me, it's not like it's not a really solid show of the genre. Like, if you were only going to read one romance, this is not the book I would point you to. Even though for me, who reads a decent amount of romance, it was fine. Okay, I'm going to stop talking about those. Oh my God, I've been talking for so long, and I was like, I'm going to be succinct today. Lies. I just lie to myself. Let's just go on to the next one that I have an unpopular opinion of, and I buddy read this with Shelly at Shelly Swearingen and Sonia, who is one of her subscribers, and it is Beloved by Toni Morrison. This is my first Toni Morrison, and I didn't dislike this book. However, I did think I was going to like it a lot more than I did. I want to just acknowledge that this book is really intelligent. Like, the writing was really well done. The way that Toni Morrison put together the plot was really, it took a lot to do. Like, in worse hands, this book wouldn't have worked at all. But for me, if I were to imagine this book as a gift, which is sometimes how I visualize the reading experience of a book, I would say that the gift looks like a puzzle box. And the puzzle box has instructions. And sometimes the instructions are very vague, so you don't actually know if you did it right until 4 or 5 steps later, where it re-explains or reiterates something. So then you would have to go back to that previous step and redo it to see or look at it again to see if you did it right. That was my experience reading this book. I felt, and I know this is an unpopular opinion, but I felt that it was the type of book that kind of said, you have to read me twice in order to get me. I'm going to go on a tangent. I really love the book Cloud Atlas by David Mitchell. And I recommended it to someone I know. And he read it. And when I asked him how he liked it, me thinking this is the best book, there's no way anyone can hate this, it's just so amazing, those feelings. He was like, it was fine. And I was like, it was fine? He's like, yeah, I feel like David Mitchell was just trying to tell me how smart he was, when he would change his language through it. And I was like, but that's how smart he is. That was my reaction. Okay, and then I think I am on the opposite end of that with Beloved, where it's oh my God, it's such an amazing book. And then I read it and I was like, I feel like it was trying to tell me it was really smart. I don't want to have to read the book a second time to understand it. I just want to read it once. And everyone's like, yeah, but that's the point. That's why it's so great. All these everyones that I haven't actually talked to. I'm just making up a proverbial day. Reading it with people was super helpful because that book, whether you love it or you don't, was really confusing. There was so much going on. There were so many seeds being planted. And you as a reader had to do a lot. You had to do a lot of the work. I was exhausted by the end of my reading experience with that. I'm like, I don't want to read another difficult book for a month. That was too much for me, which is currently not what I look for in my reading. Maybe it is for some people, but I have a difficult job where I use a lot of my brain all day. I will go to work listening to an audiobook on 1.5, and when I leave, I can't listen to it that fast anymore because my brain is literally not processing as quickly. So for me, I don't want that extra stimulus in my reading personally, which I think is what you need to want when you're getting into Beloved. So I just talked a lot. I guess what I'm going to say with that is I would still want to read Toni Morrison, but like I want Toni Morrison light. Like I don't want all of what she was giving me in Beloved. So if people like Toni Morrison and recommend other books that are like her writing, which is quite nice, and her subject matter, but like not as much of, like, I don't have to do as much of the legwork of the thinking as a reader, like, that would be cool. All right, another one that I didn't really like. I just had a bad reading month. Stone Sword Table. This is a short story collection that is actually quite long, and they're Arthurian retellings. They're King Arthur retellings. They are from a wide variety of people. There's past, present, and future ones, so they have it broken up kind of like that, where the past ones are kind of more like closer to the actual original King Arthur stories. There's present ones that take place in modern time, and then there's only a few futuristic ones. I have not read King Arthur original writings, so it's hard to sometimes to review retellings, because for me, I feel like you don't have to have read the original text to enjoy a retelling of it if it's done well. I think that with this collection, a lot of them use the same parts of the King Arthur stories so that it starts to become repetitive. So what I would recommend is that if you want to read like gender bent and like queer and like, you know, like changed King Arthur stories, and you want to read this collection, do it over a long space of time. I read it over the course of like a month and a half. I would recommend not doing that. Like, you want time between the stories so you're not comparing them and being like, I just saw that part kind of talked, like we just saw that, because it started to feel repetitive, even though the plot itself and the characters and everything felt quite different. There were a lot of misses for me in this collection. A lot of them I just don't remember at all at this point. I also did not think it was going to be as long. I was reading it on my Kindle. It's about a 500-page anthology, so it's pretty thick. There were standout ones in the book. Actually, Silvia Moreno Garcia's, which was in the future section, was probably one of my favorites, which is interesting because I just read one of her books, Mexican Gothic, last year and didn't really like it. So it kind of reinvigorated me into trying more of her works. Yeah, if you're into Arthurian retellings, I would recommend it. But if you're not, or if you're not really sure, like, I would just maybe just pick the authors you want to read from if there's any you're interested in. Now I'm going to go all the way back in time to the first book I read in January, which is Tale of the Tikongs, and this I actually quite enjoyed. It was a short story collection where they all take place on the island of the Takongs, which is a fictional island based on a real place. And it's a short story collection, but because it's a small island and it all takes place on the same island, you have repeat characters that kind of come up between the stories, and it's kind of just giving you the life of this island through short stories, like through different interactions that happen, through different stories of different people. Kind of like each short story focuses on one person and something that they did or something that happened to them, and it kind of like went from there, and you had like this theme of this like one character kind of showing up through all of them in different ways. It was sarcastic, it was full of humor that was very like tongue-in-cheek, and a lot of it focused on the way of life on these islands and its interaction with colonialism, but in a humorous way. There was a lot of aspects of religious colonialism. Religion itself played quite a big role in this. At times, it totaled the line of cheesy and ended up into the cheesy category, but as a short story collection, I just thought it was a whole lot of fun. It was very short, super consumable. I would highly recommend it to someone who kind of just wants to get like who likes that kind of humor, who likes to see also themes like that can be portrayed as very dark, but see them through like a humorous lens where it's kind of like poking fun at colonialism and also poking fun at the culture that exists in the place before and during colonialism. So quite enjoyed this one. And then I was supposed to get to a few more African classics in the month, but I just didn't do it. The one I did get to was Our Sister Killjoy. This does not read like a typical novel, but it's also not a short story collection. So it has like 4 parts that kind of follow the same woman, kind of like moments in her life, but each one is told very differently. She's from Ghana. Your main character goes to Europe, and she travels there, and she studies there, and she interacts with other people from Africa there, and she interacts with like white folks there. There is the second story, we'll call it, talks a lot about her relationship with this German woman when she's like in a small town in Germany, and there was a lot of very strange tension in that story. And then there's another one that really focuses on like her laments about people leaving Africa, and like that you're kind of like, you leave on these scholarships to go to different places to like bring knowledge back and like bring things back, and it's like the intention is to like come home afterwards, but all these people end up staying in Europe, and she kind of laments about that. And then all of these other characters kind of have like a chorus of like, well, I have a better life here, or like, I can send money home to my entire family, which I couldn't do if I lived in Ghana, in like the village I came from. I wouldn't have the same opportunities. And it was quite an interesting story. It didn't remind me of Song of Luino, Song of a Coal, but like in Song of Luino, Song of a Coal, you have this man who, it didn't take place in Uganda. I think took place in Uganda. And he went to Europe to study, and then he comes home and he thinks that he's better than his wife. And it's his wife like lamenting to him of like, why are you bringing this colonialism home, essentially, and telling me it's better than the way that we've always lived here. So it was just like very interesting to see like a different side to that argument or like debate. But yeah, as far as like the African classics I've read so far, it's one of the ones I've preferred. I really love Song of Luino, Song of a Coal. It was solid. It was very inventive. It was really unlike anything I had read. It felt very fresh. Let's go on to the nonfiction I read in the month. So I read Medical Apartheid. Medical Apartheid is like, just for me, like a really great example of what I like in nonfiction, because it's like wide in breadth. So it's talking about the dark history of medical experimentation on Black Americans from colonial times to present. It has like a structured amount of time, colonial times to present times, and it's structuring not just the whole of Black history or the whole of something, but it's medical history, the medical examination and like experimentation and everything that goes along with the medical field and the Black body. It has a lot of upsetting things that have happened. It kind of talks about how the syphilis, I don't remember where it took place, the syphilis case where men who had syphilis were not being treated, known that they weren't being treated so they could watch what happens to the body. That's something that's very well known, but all of these other things, like basically the premise of this book is like, you might have heard of that, but like there's a lot of other things that build upon this basically like use of the Black body by America and the American government for years and years and years. So it really speaks to the fact that slavery might have been abolished, but the use of the Black body for white bodies' purposes it didn't go away when slavery went away. Through the use of through the lens of the medical field. It's like one of those books that when I read it, I'm like, yeah, this is stuff that everyone really should know because it's super pertinent to our history. Okay, the second nonfiction I read was Pushout, the Criminalization of Black Girls in Schools. This was about the criminalization of Black girls in schools, but how it was told was like the author went to places to interview Black girls that were in the criminal system in some capacity. She interviews them and kind of asks them about their experiences and asks them questions and asks them what they kind of think should be done. Just their experience in schools and like how they're kind of criminalized there, their experience in like criminal institutions, I guess, and the schools there. And so a lot of the beginning is like kind of just her presenting her conversations with these girls and kind of contextualizing what she wants to talk about based on her conversations with statistics kind of intermixed in there. The book kind of changes pace quite a bit and goes into her kind of iterating her thesis a little bit more based on all of all of the stuff that she gave you when she was interviewing folks, and then kind of like pushes you forward into like, this is what we should do. So it felt much more like an active, like, not like guide, but like a guide to action, maybe. It was kind of like, let me show you the problems based on my conversations with these girls that are impacted by this, and then let me push you into, okay, now we agree these are the issues that they're facing, and now what do we do about those things? Like, how do we fix this? So yeah, it was much more of like a call to action type of book. It touched on like the criminalization of girls in school, be it their dress, be it their hair, be it their like attitude, how like Black bodies and Black female bodies are treated differently than white female bodies. Like there was an example of like a 6-year-old Black girl being arrested because she was like being unruly in the classroom, which is just like, what the fuck? But that happens fairly consistently and has happened, where it's like these adults for some reason feel like they can't handle a 6-year-old child. Very bizarre. There's also a lot of talk about like truancy and like how the school system fails to see that sometimes these girls are being what is the word I'm looking for? Taken advantage of sexually. Like they have a pimp and they're like in school, and that is like sometimes why girls these Black girls do not make it to school, and the school system kind of failing to realize that. So yeah, just like another like good read that I had in the month. Okay, and that is all I read. I thought this would be shorter, but as we know, I am not concise. So I hope to have a better reading month in March. I think I will, just based off of the books I'm reading right now. Spoilers, I'm currently reading Kintu. I'm like 100 pages in and really loving it. I'm also reading Milk, Blood, Heat, which is a short story collection, and really loving that too. So it looks like March is looking up. But that is all I have for this video. Let me know if you've read any of these. Let me know if you disagree with my unpopular opinions, and feel free to tell me I'm wrong. Happy reading.